Hi, good evening, everyone, and once again, a very, very warm welcome to what is the Muscle Health Foundation Charity's 5th episode in our 2021 series of informal conversational fireside chats with interesting guest personalities and the occasional celeb, called In Conversation With, hosted by myself, Michael McGrath. Established with one goal in mind, it's the charity's hope that these conversations help just a little, to bring our families, our community of young people and adults with muscular dystrophy together, including their friends across the country, as well as reaching new audiences in enabling everyone to feel just that little less isolated and a little more connected with our muscle warrior tribe. Since our last episode 2 weeks ago, gosh, how time flies. What a few weeks they've been. Do you know what? We discovered that Prince Harry is more than capable of singing the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song. Heck, perhaps tonight's guest, with his immense power of invention and imagination, perhaps a theme song in mind. Well, we'll wait and see, won't we? But do you know what? Wasn't it so good to see Harry having some great fun with James Corden on the Late Late Show last week, having a pot of tea on an open-top double-decker bus tour going around Los Angeles? You try saying that after a few G&Ts. Do you know what? We also recently heard about the phenomenon that is bioluminescence, the very first time our planet, where scientists discovered that, get this, 3 deep water shark species living off the New Zealand coast essentially glow in the dark. They emit light in the dark. And I have a thought that maybe this evening's guest perhaps has a view about bioluminescence. We'll soon find out. And finally, this is the segue to my creative segue, if you like, to my introducing tonight's very, very special guest, where I hope very, very shortly you'll be uplifted, where you'll get an injection of imagination, I hope, that will not only boost, but I hope will most definitely counter those discombobulated, those meh days that continue to prevail in these very, very strange times. Like many around the world, I watched the TV screen in the joy of a moment in time when NASA successfully landed its latest rover, Perseverance, on the surface of Mars. Wasn't that a special moment, huh? It stirred my soul, and the ambition, the technical challenges, the distances involved, the ingenuity, and the wonder of possibility, the sheer magnificence of the human spirit, all encapsulated in a single fantastic outcome. But let's not forget that NASA's existing robot called Curiosity is still on the red planet, working brilliantly following its landing in 2012. Curiosity recently celebrated 3,000 Martian days on the surface of the red planet, about 9 weeks ago, so just after Christmas, when ironically 9 of our charity's Muscle Warrior Power Chair Football Club players, team players, discovered something rather unique, where I know levels of curiosity were piqued. Get this, because of one of our next guests' inventions. So, just before we explore Tom's world of wonder, before we have a cerebral workout and delve into the power of daydreaming, before we learn how the power of our imagination can turn our anxieties into a superpower like no other, I'm again this week dispatching in this broadcast, in this moment in time, enormous quantities of virtual hugs and loads of love and humongous oceans of hope to our community, to our families, to all those who've received a phone call over the last 4 or 5 weeks, who've had a natter with the charity's community engagement lead, Joe, who continue to bear with the challenges of this wretched pandemic. Once again, I want you all to know that you're not alone, that the charity is here to support you, to listen to you, to help you however we can, and to let you know that we're always, always thinking of you and your well-being. So onwards we go into the evening. A few housekeeping points. Firstly, a safeguarding note. As always, we have eyes over tonight's broadcast. So if any improper comments or unacceptable behaviors are observed, know that action will be taken. And secondly, all episodes are recorded and streamed on the charity's Facebook and YouTube channels. And as always, you can help increase our reach by subscribing, commenting, and sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, delighted to welcome someone who is continually striving to bring uplifting and lasting solutions to some of the world's problems. Tonight is an opportunity, a unique opportunity, to get inside an inventor's mind. And my guest is someone who knows a thing or two about perseverance, who lives and breathes sustainability, who designs amazing things for longevity, reaching zero carbon goals, a person described as the personification of the great British inventor. Do you know what? When I think of inventors, I don't know about you, but I think of Thomas Edison, who invented the incandescent light bulb. I think of Nikola Tesla, who invented the induction motor with rotating magnetic fields. And recently I've been thinking of tonight's guest. And yes, do you know what? Planets do align and things happen for a reason. You see, here's the thing, all right? I met tonight's guest some 25 years ago. And as they say, the rest is history. So put your virtual hands together for Tom Lawton. Hey, Tom, a very warm welcome to you, sir. How's it going?
Michael, what a lovely intro. I'm in so many places. I feel like I want to go to Mars now, and to be talked about in such a hall of fame. Wow, no, incredible. I have my work to do to make that one world-changing invention to join the ranks of Edison and all of the other greats. But yeah,
all the other greats. How's it going? You're in, forget about Mars. How's rural Wiltshire this evening?
Well, I'm really well. It's so lovely to be here, talking to you from the only place I should talk to you, which is my workshop. So to my left, I have 25 years worth of inventions and prototypes. To my right, I have mess and chaos and things in all sorts of pieces falling apart. But that's as you would expect it to be, and you don't want to see the floor, because the floor is always the worst. But no, I'm really pleased to be here. I've just come from my factory where I've been building my current invention all day long, and yeah, thrilled to be chatting to you and your wonderful friends and community everywhere.
Fantastic. So Tom, come on then. Who's been doing those lockdown haircuts in your family?
You can't, well, I've done my best to groom my hair into some sort of order here. I thought I couldn't wear my hat because that would be daft. But yeah, I look the most disheveled. I have had a shave. I've done that today for you especially. But
good man.
the answer to that is nobody's doing the lockdown haircuts, which is why it's so unkempt.
So hopefully I got my facts right here. So born in Dunstable, is that right?
That is right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You've invented a host of different products, from recordable alarm clock, the wake you I was reading about, because in your words, we all have more imagination than a beep beep. I really like that.
Well, don't we? And it completely inspired by the frustration and the sheer terror of waking up to that beep. I thought, yeah, we've got to be able to imagine something better than that.
And then BubbleScope, or BubblePix as it became later known, which is like a mobile 360-degree video, a fave gadget, I believe, of a certain chef by the name of Jamie Oliver. Is that right?
Completely right. Yeah, that was inspired by my first trip to India. I was lucky enough to, well, I say lucky, I was on a 56-hour journey traveling through India many moons ago. So it's a long time. And there's something about being in a confined space that, whilst it can start off a little bit frustrating, a little bit boring, if you go through it, you can find inspiration. So a 56-hour journey inspired me to put my head out the window, which you can do slightly more safely in India because the door's already open. I wouldn't recommend it on a British train, but and observe the whole of the panoramic world around me. So that was where BubbleScope came from. Yeah.
And BubblePix was a bit of a product which was loved by Apple's design team. So how did all this inventing and designing begin? Let's go there for a minute.
Well, I think, as I touched on a second ago, there are two really component key factors, and one is boredom. I grew up, so I was born in Dunstable, you're quite right, but then I grew up in very south rural Somerset, and this is before, well, we were in a little village, put it that way, and there wasn't very much entertainment. So what do you do? And of course, we didn't have bowling or cinemas or anything else. We did have the outdoors, and that, of course, is the greatest inspiration of all, really. If you have the chance to be outside, then the nature kind of has all of the everything you could ever desire. So as kids, I was probably a little bit bored, but I had a father who, whilst he didn't teach me and he didn't certainly project or put his ways to me, he was an avid fixer. So he would, if something broke, and I think this is really the gem of where it first came from. As a child, if I broke the toy that I was playing with, my dad would sit patiently, usually with me over his shoulder, and he would fix it. And through that process of seeing something that I was motivated to see working again, I would pay attention. And whether it was, could have been anything, but I would sit there and watch him observe. And it was almost like a kind of magic. And through osmosis, I suppose, I observed that, and I thought, well, if things can be fixed, then things can be created, and that was the gem of, I suppose, what became of why I became an inventor.
Yeah.
But there's also another important factor. So that something that's inspiring to kind of show you that this can be done, and there is a way of seeing how things work. Then you've got to have almost the boredom to be frustrated with perhaps where you've got make your own entertainment. But I think there's something else as well, and it resides as a trait in the British, probably more than any other nation that I can think of, and that's the ability to see things laterally. So and what do I mean by that? I mean solving a problem in the way that's perhaps unintuitive or counterintuitive, or is not the obvious way to do it. And I think that slightly lateral approach to life. And you don't have to be an inventor to make the most of that. You can just read the world in your way. And often, if it's not the way of the crowd, it can present a useful and different perspective. So, all of those things together have somehow...
I think that useful, different perspective is something that's come to all of us through programs like the Repair Shop. And I've just had an idea.
Oh, wow.
So, the Inventor Shop, or, something that actually allows people to bring their invention and other people to look over their invention. And there's a TV program right there, Tom. It's got your name all over it.
And I'm with you. And I've had discussions in a similar kind of vein with people. I don't know if you were aware, but I did a TV show with Channel 4 with my then 6-year-old, he's now 13, my son Barney, and we turned an old boat into this imaginarium of ideas. So I've played in that world before. I completely agree, though. The Repair Shop is my favorite show. The thing I love most about it, and it goes back to the essence of what I was saying about being inspired by my dad fixing things, that process. I mean, you watch the Repair Shop and you learn immediately. You learn all sorts of things, and as someone who, if you actually practice it, the greatest thing you learn, of course, is patience, because these things take time, and maybe that's something that the modern world, it had lost sight with. Maybe that's something that we all have the opportunity to regain again, because our worlds have become smaller through this pandemic. So rather than get frustrated, maybe there's the time to sit and amend something. I don't know. What I do know is that my fixing skills aren't anywhere near as good as the Repair Shop people's, because they are so fine, aren't they? I mean, you've got a leather fixer, you've got welders and all sorts, but it can be an incredibly satisfying process.
I mean, there's an awful lot of artistry to their work, and artistry, I would imagine, to your work. And I think you were alluding a little bit earlier to the Channel 4 production many years ago, Tom's Fantastic Floating Home, and I've seen photographs of it, and I loved it. I thought, that it's interesting, and that idea of creating something that's perhaps never been created before, but that's good on you, and long may your creative thought process keep going. So a little bit of a gear change. We're going to talk just a little bit about movies, just let people in a little bit more to get to know you a bit. Now, I happen to know that you like, is it The Fifth Element? Is that one of them?
Oh, absolutely. So it's one of those films I probably have seen 10 times, and I don't watch films twice. If I've seen a film, I've seen it. But it's one of those that I think, because it's so science fiction focused and imaginative, I think that even now it feels futuristic, and it's 20 years after it was released. So it was a brilliant film for somebody who liked fantasy, and absolutely.
Bruce Willis, Gary Oldman, and Mila Jovovich, I think, and it was inspired by Mr. Keeping Evil and Mr. Zorg at Bay.
Yes. exactly.
And Clash of the Titans with Sam. Is that the modern one, as in Sam Worthington and Liam
Oh
Neeson?
no, do you know the Clash of the Titans? It would have to be the original version
The
as well.
original.
Yeah, and it was Ray Harryhausen's creations, wasn't it? He was the guy who
That's right.
perfected and mastered the art of stop frame animation, which would have inspired everybody from Aardman to CGI now. You know, Pixar, no doubt, have all followed in his footsteps. But his depiction of these great beasts made out of plasticine and walking around, whether it was skeletons in battle or the scorpions or whatever, as a child of like 9 years old, you were like, this is incredible. And so I think, yeah, those two films are really good examples of what I loved about seeing other people's imagination come into work. And I think that's why I like being an inventor, is that it's not all about me. I think there's something quite nice about just doing this, and other people go, hey, he's living with his imagination. What, maybe I could do that too. And you'd only do it if you'd seen other legends and heroes like Luc Besson and Ray Harryhausen lead the way.
So living with one's imagination. So I think this is the second or third time we've done this. So this is the quick fire round. Okay, so this is a way of our audience getting to know you a little bit more. And so you ready to go on this one, Tom?
Sure.
Excellent. Right, here we go. Marmite, love it or loathe it?
Oh, I'm going to say loathe it. I don't actually mind it, but I don't use it. I don't spread it, so I must hate it.
Strawberries or blueberries? Quick fire.
Strawberries.
Worst invention?
Oh, leaf blower.
Most used emoji?
My most used emoji. Recently, it's peace.
Okay, nice. One thing you're excited about in 2021?
Oh my God. Seeing other people in the pub. I don't even need to be there myself. Just to see them would be enough.
Like just getting into a pub.
Yeah, or even just walking by the window and, oh man, look at the people. They're not even in the same bubble. That would be good.
Poached or scrambled eggs?
Oh, poached, because why not? My wife makes them so well.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song or theme tune of Record Breakers?
Oh, that's a good question. I am going to go for Dedication by Roy Castle, the theme tune of Record Breakers. Yeah.
Do you happen to know it?
Well, yeah. Do you know? It's got to be if you want to be the best, if you want to beat the rest, dedication's what you need. If you want to be a record breaker. Now, wasn't it good having presenters who actually sang the theme tune at the end?
Very good. Very, very, very good. Bardadas or Molten Brown?
I don't even know what you're talking about. I think the second one, Molten Brown, sounds like a bread, but the you'll have to enlighten me.
You can drizzle in the bath. Speak to your boss. She'll tell you about Molten Brown. Ask for it at Christmas time.
That sounds good.
Priceless. Most uplifting song in your playlist?
Oh wow. Do you know what? It's really weird because it wouldn't be typically uplifting, but I am obsessed at the moment with the theme tune of Mr. Beast. He's a YouTuber, right? But because my youngest son is such a huge fan of his and he's learning to play the tune on the piano, when I hear the tune, I think of my youngest son trying to play it.
Nice.
So that uplifts me. Yeah.
Nice. One item that you take to a desert island?
Oh, one item I take to a desert island. That's put me on the spot, isn't it? It'd have to be a pen and paper. It'd have to be something that I could sketch with.
Good stuff.
I'm going to give ideas.
I'm just going to dive into the chat room and pick up a few questions. Evening Potter's Bar. So what one problem would Tom most like to solve in the next 10 years? Quick answer on this one, Tom.
A way of unifying people, so that people don't overcome their differences. At the moment, people seem to be bashing their heads a little bit. A way just to find more peace and listen. That would be a thing.
That would be a big thing. That'd be a major thing. Crumbs. Chris, good evening, Chris. Hope the family are all good. Hope Harry's good. Hi, Tom. How do you decide or choose a project to pursue?
You have to do something. Bearing in mind, as an inventor, it's very rare that somebody is going to pay you to do this. So you have to find a way to resource it yourself. Therefore, the number one thing is to be passionate about it. You have to follow your heart. It'd be different if I consult and I do things for other people, but if I'm doing it myself, I have to feel it in my heart every morning.
Yeah, no, good question and a great answer. So let's we're We've got some more quick fire rounds coming up a little later on, but let's chat about the power of one's imagination. Now, you mentioned in a tweet, which caught my attention, about turning anxiety into a superpower by adding that ingredient of imagination. Tell us more.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the art of life and living is very often to try and stay focused in the present. And if you can master that and be like the monk who's in the monastery, then you really won't need to project into the future. But it's very difficult as a thinking, creative, feeling person, which we all are, to not let your mind go forwards. And there are two types of way that I see that your mind can go forward. And one is to go anxiously forward. And in that way, you're kind of projecting your fears into the future, and they will make you feel perhaps uncomfortable because there's so much uncertainty in the future. But the future is always uncertain no matter what. We don't know what it is. The other is to look at the future and to project your dreams and your hopes towards the future. And that's a very different way of looking at life and how we look forwards. And so I am a full spectrum person, which means that I, of course, feel anxious about certain things. One of the anxieties I feel a lot of is to do with the environment. And so as a designer and an industrialist, which is essentially what I am, so I make stuff, and everything that I make is going to have some sort of detrimental effect on the planet. It just does, by the nature of doing something. Now that could terrify you, and you could think, oh my God, it's my responsibility. All of these, and hey, we only have to look at the news, and we can feel ourselves fed with lots of information, often discombobulating, that can draw our anxieties out. There's a lot of doom and gloom in the mainstream press, not exclusively, and you have to make an effort to make sure the diet of information you receive is good, but you can't avoid it nevertheless. And the truth is, there's some people are frightened about the future. So how do you overcome that anxiety? Because the trouble is, when you only dread the future, when you only think, oh my God, the worst is going to happen, it can actually stress you to the point that you end up you fall into inaction. You kind of can't, sometimes you can't do anything, because it's almost like, well, God, the world's going to end because of all of these factors. We've got to change the course of humanity in the next 10 years, the next 20 years. Otherwise, hey, it's extinction. Like, my God, to take that first thing in the morning and not feel anxious is a terrifying and very difficult thing to do. So I'm not saying how you magically change the situation, but you can change the way that you perceive it. So what I do to myself is I invite myself through my imagination to not avoid the uncomfortable thing, which is that, hey, plastic pollution's bad, throwaway society's not good, these fossil fuels aren't good. There's so many problems that we could look at, but rather than go, oh my God, I must solve all of these and paint them in that way, I try and take on the bad news, and then to go, hey, well, I can face that. Now, what can I do about it? And the only way that I can project positively that I can do something about it is through my imagination. And so it's going, well, and that invites you to be creative, because the great thing about the future is that it is not settled. It's not certain. There is nothing that's certain. There's the pandemic will be something that passes. The problems that we have environmentally will be something that passes. And actually, I believe that with a proactive imagination and then actually putting energy behind that and doing things, I think that you can make yourself feel better in that way, but actually even better if you do stuff. I think you can change the course of the world. And the truth is that everything that we see around us now, I mean, everything, roads, money, books, your favorite movie, whatever it is, has been imagined by somebody. So we create the world through our imagination, and our imagination is what creates the future. And you simply say it's a deal I have with myself, which is that I love life and I am optimistic. If I'm being truthful, I am. I really do believe that we're here for for joyous reasons, and we're here to excel and to thrive. But all of these factors that go against us, well, hey, the deal is with myself is I will do my best to imagine a better future.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean that we're on the same page right there in terms of optimism for this moment and optimism for the future. And one of the phrases that I'm often using, I found myself using an awful lot actually since lockdown 1, way back in March, is that this moment, it doesn't get better than this moment. This is it. Right now, this moment is it.
Yeah.
And that, I find that a very grounding perspective. And then you can let your imagination then flow from that point. Let me just jump into the chat room. Rachel, thank you so much for your question. Hey, Tom, can you think of a novel use for a brick? One that perhaps hasn't been thought of before. Is this somebody that you know?
It's a brilliant question. Okay, so it's funny. I was posed this before because it's a test in creativity as well. To think of, and people at home should be thinking, well, what would you use a brick for? Traditionally, you put it in a wall, and there's one answer I'm not going to give, which is that I could put it through a window. I'd only do that if I was rescuing someone from a burning building. You go through. Before you start brainstorming those kind of things abstractly, do you not wonder, how have I used a brick before? And I've definitely used one once to light a match. So as it's been on a fireside. I've also used it if I've been making to do the actual patting of cement. I've seen someone use one in baking before as well, and they've done the same thing to knead dough with it. So there's brilliant question, Ray.
Good. I mean, you could paint that brick your favorite color and use it as a paperweight,
You could. Anyway. You could. In the olden days, you would have painted it in black rubber. Someone would have thrown it into a swimming pool, and there would have been a group of children who'd learned to swim by pulling the brick out the bottom of the swimming pool.
Interesting.
One thing I have observed, though, in the whole of my life since pulling a rubber brick out of a swimming pool, I've never had to pull a rubber brick out of a swimming pool. I'm not quite sure why it's an essential part of learning your swimming proficiency, but anyhow.
You talked about a little earlier about this kind of the deal with yourself, which I like. I want to explore that a little bit more. So a part of the deal with yourself is there some deal about daydreaming and this idea? Should we perhaps, Tom, be daydreaming a little more right now in this moment during these kind of challenging times?
Well, do you know what? It's really interesting. I think so, and it's been it's something that I naturally do. So it's like being an inventor. I didn't intend to be an inventor. I've kind of gone with the path of what feels best, and perhaps also what I'm best at. So if you can marry those things together, it's interesting though. I was last week in conversation with a very, very clever lady, and who talked about creativity in the brain, and what I learned from that was really insightful about how our brain works when it's in a daydream state. And so actually it's very easy to think when you're given a problem. And I had this the other day with my wife. We were watching a film. She couldn't remember who the actor's name was, and she was like, who is that? And I didn't know either. So it wasn't someone that wasn't knowledge that I could draw upon. And she's kind of caught between those two sides of the brain, trying to work out what it was. And it was when she left the room to go make a cup of tea that she wasn't thinking about it. The name came back to her, and of course it was Paul Bettany. And she said, "Oh, it's Paul Bettany." And I said, "That's interesting." I was just last night. I was talking to I was part of a lecture about our minds and creativity, and was told that act of stepping away from the problem, actually your brain goes into this kind of groovy subconscious I can solve problems mode without actually thinking about it. And so the state of daydreaming, which is akin to trance states or meditation or whatever, personally, I found my best ideas have always come when I'm caught between two worlds. And the greatest is like on a train journey. You're kind of, so as I mentioned earlier with the 360 camera, 56 hours on a train in India, you're kind of stuck somewhere. And then maybe the mind can just kind of freewheel a little bit more than it would do normally. And what I've learned is that space, that state of mind, is not only is it enjoyable, but it's incredibly potent for our problem-solving skills. So what might look isn't it funny? As a child, you were probably discouraged to daydream out the window. Now, because you had to focus on what you were doing, but actually, it was the daydreaming out the window that possibly helped you solve the text or see something in that different perspective. So I feel validated that I am now a professional daydreamer, and that's not a cop-out. That's a good thing. And of course, you can't spend your whole life in a daydream. You could do, and actually, perhaps some of the world's most successful people have done. Roald Dahl used to describe. I've seen a wonderful film about him recently where he was at the shed at the end of the garden, and he goes through his day, and he described himself in a moony frame of mind. So, and what does moony mean? And it kind of, I quite like it. It feels like it's a slightly otherworldly frame of mind. If I think of my friends and family who might play musical instruments, my dad's a self-taught jazz pianist. So not only was he good at fixing toys, he taught himself to play jazz. Now, he doesn't play from a script of music. He kind of goes into a zone, right? And I'm not a musician, but I've witnessed musicians when they go into this zone, and it's such a wonderful place. I've also seen Aboriginal artists in Uluru in the middle of Australia, and they have a thing called dream time, and their artwork's quite primitive, and that's not, I don't mean that in a patronizing sense. Their tools are primitive, their methodology and the feeling behind the work's incredible, but it's just little dots, and it's almost a meditation in itself, and yet they produce these incredibly articulate storytelling pieces of work, and so I'm all up for the daydreamer, because actually it's been told to me by a very clever research psychologist, a doctor of brains, that actually your brain lights up when you go into a daydream. So
you're meeting lots of very bright, clever people by the sounds of it, and it's interesting because I'm thinking about our community now. I'm thinking about the benefits of daydreaming and actually just setting some time aside during the day to have a little moment to daydream, and whether that's listening to a piece of music to help facilitate the daydreaming process, or in my case, I drizzle a bit of molten brown into the bath and I have my best ideas in the bath, and the idea of daydreaming to beautiful smells lifts my spirit. Anyway, we're going to go for the second quick fire round. So Tom, you ready for the second quick fire round?
Go for it.
All right. Love of the desert or love of the ocean?
Oh, it has to be the ocean. Although I have spent time in the desert, which was fascinating because there's such little there. Yeah.
Good stuff. What did you have for breakfast this morning, Tom?
What did I have? It's done exciting, but I just had toast with butter. There was something about it. Probably too much butter.
Food hell?
My food hell?
Food hell.
Figs.
Okay. Food heaven.
Food heaven. Anything that my eldest son cooks. He is such a good chef. He did a beef Wellington 2 weekends ago.
Wow.
I'm talking mushroom paste and the pastry and it was incredible. And how can you not be proud of when your kids cook? I mean, amazing.
Hey, when lockdown's over, we're coming over to yours for beef Wellington.
Please do. Please join us.
Homeschooling. I want you to grade or rate yourself.
I am. I'm not as good as my wife. My wife is the proficient homeschooler. I mean,
here's a first. Rate your wife.
As you have to ask the kids.
Homeschooling.
She's 10 out of 10. She's 10 out of 10. They do it every day. And of course she says, no, she doesn't think she's any good, but she's exceptional because the kids are flying. Okay, good. Do you have an affectionate name for your car? I call it my wife's car. It's true.
Excellent. Okay, it's all right. It's good.
I have a bike, and when the car, it's my wife's car.
Okay, that's fine.
I say that because the driver's seat is always in her favorite position.
Okay. Hey Tom, you're an inventor. So your favorite gadget?
My favorite gadget, it's this.
Okay, we're going to come on to that a little bit. That's okay. Good. So hey Tom, if money was no object, okay, what would you invent?
Oh wow, well I'll be on with this, and it would be in okay. Can I tell you what it would be?
Yeah, come on, go for it.
Yeah, right, okay. So going back to the desert, going back to Mars, I have got this intuitive idea that the way that we plow fields, I mean, across the world is wrong. I think that the mechanistic plowing approach is so, it's so kind of 20th century and backwards beyond that. And I think if you look at the way that nature moves, its shapes and its spirals and its curves, there are no straight lines in nature. And so I have this intuitive feeling. It's not just a feeling. I've had it tested, and I've shared it with some very, very bright people, some of the world's greatest soil experts. And what they've told me to do is I want to improve what's known as bioturbation in the worst and most poorly soils on the planet. So I want to take this to the desert, but it will exist as an array. Imagine this as a rotating agitator that could feed organic matter into the soil and almost massage it in. So if imagine you were next to Dubai and you've got desertification that's coming in, the soil's losing its chi. What I want to do is I want to put the organic matter back into that, and they do it at the moment, but it burns off and it dries off and it blows away. I want to weave it into the soil, and if I can do that and improve the bioturbance or the bioturbation, then that will encourage the earthworms to come back. And if you can bring the earthworms come back, then we can save our soils. So that's what I would do.
I love the passion that's coming through loud and clear. And here's the word for this evening: bioturbation. I've learned something this evening.
Yeah.
I'm just going to jump into that chat room. And so Jem, hey Jem, good evening to you, sir. Could we ask Tom, could we learn to simultaneously translate animal and human language in order to communicate with other mammals and birds? Interesting question. We're going to keep you quite tight on this. What does that mean? Could we learn to simultaneously translate animal and human language in order to communicate with other mammals and birds? Interesting.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? I think we can learn to do that, and I think that skill already exists, and it's usually held by people who are indigenous to the flora and the fauna that we're talking about. So I was lucky enough. My sister runs a jungle camp in the middle of central India, and she works in tiger conservation. Many moons ago, I travelled there, and I met a guy who could speak to a tiger, and he did so he's not allowed to do it. He was a naturalist, but he'd grown up indigenously within the forests of India. This is in Kana, in the middle of Madhya Pradesh. And this guy in front of us, he made the noise of a tiger, and it was like an om. So if you think of the chanting sound that the Buddhists and the monks make, it an om. Well, this guy made this om noise, and it was quite short. And you know who responded? The tigers.
Yeah.
So I witnessed it. Now, so you don't need a technology, but what you do need is a knowledge that is so unaffected by our human technological mechanistic ways. So it already exists. The question is, how much of it still exists? But there are real dinosaurs out there. Chris,
thanks for your question. Hopefully you got the answer that you're looking for, because hey, Tom uses his wife's car, so far for him to comment about improving his wife's car. Yes. So I'm just going to finish off the quick fire round, because we've just digressed there slightly. So Michael McIntyre or Ricky Gervais?
Oh, Ricky, I get Ricky Gervais. Although Michael McIntyre can be so funny, especially when he does that thing with the mobile phone and someone's up in the gallery. I mean, you're just like, oh my god, yeah, it's very funny.
Thinking about your playlist, final one on this one is Just the Way You Are, Bruno Mars, or Walking on Sunshine with Katrina and the Waves, or I Got a Feeling by Black Eyed Peas?
I would go with Bruno Mars.
Bruno Mars. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Tom, have you heard of a chap called Dr. Rangan Chatterjee?
I don't know if I have.
Okay. Well, he's a British physician. He's a TV presenter and he's a podcaster. I would invite you to Google him afterwards. But he does this kind of little intervention every evening with his family around the dinner table. Okay, and it's all around something that he calls the 3 Ps, with a spotlight on gratitude. All right. So Tom, you've been a great sport so far. We're pushing through this conversation really well. And I want to ask you, one person today that you're grateful for.
I'm grateful for my brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
One pleasure today that you're grateful for.
I am grateful for the freedom to ride my bike.
And something that's been promised that you're grateful for.
It's unconditional, but I'm grateful for my wife's love.
Okay. We're going to have a little chat about lockdown now. So, Tom, thinking about lockdown, thinking about how it's changed the way perhaps you've had to, live your life. Have you managed to stay sane?
Was I sane in the first place is the first question. So I don't know if I'm the person who should truly.
Okay.
Yeah, so
were you sane in the first place then, sir?
Question. This is so when you return to the normal, what was the normal? I don't know. In many ways, I felt prepared for this because I'm used to having a certain amount of unpredictability to my life. So I have the energy to deal with this, but I of course have felt all of the uncomfortable feelings that probably almost everybody shared. So yeah, I struggled in a normal way, of course.
Yeah. So can I just delve into that a little bit more, because our community, so our young people, our young adults, as a charity we go from 8 to 28 in terms of our beneficiary age range, and our community are those people with muscular dystrophy across the country, and all of them have been shielding since essentially March last year, as I have. You got any top tips? Any just a little nugget that we can all take away from you?
Well, it's funny, I've thought about this a lot because I knew I was coming to talk to you in the community, and the only way I can really relate, because my day once we're all in lockdown is different, because I have certain luxuries. As I say, I can ride my bike, I can free my mind in that way. So it's very difficult to relate to quite how difficult and challenging this year will have been for you. But when I was in my late 20s, I had a terrible car crash, and I spent about 18 months learning to walk properly, and I spent all of that time essentially in isolation, stuck at home with a broken leg. And that, I think, was where I started to, it was the first time I appreciated the vulnerability of my mental health, to not be able to go to my normal activities. And I think that's where don't get me wrong, I was always an imaginative person. I've always been creative, but I think that I made an extra effort to create work, to produce things. Now, this could be drawings, or could be poetry, could be anything that it was that actually lifted my own spirits. It was that realization that I'm responsible for me, actually. And so to get into certain routines. So for me, I tend to be all right if I can express myself. If I can't express myself, then I can go inwards, right? So my thoughts can go inwards. My body can become a bit more frustrated. So you must appreciate, I don't understand, or I'm not qualified to understand how you guys would make yourself physically feel good, but you've obviously, that's such an important component to our minds as well, is to have some element of movement. But I've got sketchbooks up behind on the wall over there, and they'll all be full of ideas that I had when I was stuck with a broken leg for a long time. And I think that was what there's almost like a tool for yourself to be able to project your imagination forward positively. It didn't even matter if the drawings became something or not, but the fact I could express them meant that they weren't stuck in my mind. And some days, of course, you might just want to scribble or have no good thoughts, but they're all valid ideas. This is the thing. People will, and it's so easy for anybody who looks at my career and the type of work that I've done to go, oh my goodness, that's so impressive. You have to remember that for every good idea, there are 10 that are bad, and they're all valid. And for every final design I have, there are 100 sketches that work right, and they're all valid. And so it's really important to understand that we're all a work in progress, and to not judge yourself in that way. So I mean, like, as in, to not, just do something, just express yourself in some form, fix something, doodle something, draw something. It doesn't matter so long as you're doing something, but go easy on yourself as well. You're not supposed to, there's, and then if you create something that's wonderful, well, isn't that a bonus?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, a lot of our community, most if not all, have been, very distressed, heightened levels of anxiety, increasing levels of discomfort with the way the world is at the minute, mental health issues going through the ceiling, and certainly in the last month or so, lots of conversations have been happening with our families, and what we're doing is we're sending all of our families that we're having conversations with Charlie Maxey's book, The Boy, the Mole, the Horse, and so on, and inviting our families to do their own little illustration with a little message of hope to other families. So you talk about creativity, you talk about having a reason and a shared purpose. It's something that I know families really appreciate. The simple act of a phone call to say, "How are you doing?" So I'm going to jump into the chat room. Mel, thank you so much for joining us, Mel. Good evening. Hope you're well. Question: what do you do when an idea comes to a dead end? Fairly quick answer because time is eating up.
There's an art to letting things go. There really is. There's an art to going, hey, that one, maybe I missed it. Maybe I was before the mark. Maybe I was too late. Whatever. They're just ideas, actually. So the art's not attaching to them too much, which is difficult when you put your mortgage into them. But
yes. You know what? We all recognize, Tom, don't we, that now more than ever, we all need something to really help to lift our spirits. So, if you could invite a couple of people, whether they're well known or otherwise, to your home to have a herbal tea or a coffee or whatever it is you enjoy to help lift your spirits, who would they be and why?
Who would they be and why? At the moment, I think that would be open to pretty much anybody, because there's been such little variety, hasn't there? We've had, we've just been with the family. So I adore just people with stories who are themselves. I mean, honestly, it's funny. The natural propensity is to think of somebody famous there. Actually, there's just lovely people in my town who I just enjoy having a chat with. And you'd be very welcome yourself, Michael, if I'm honest.
So thank you. It's very kind.
And I mean that wholeheartedly. I mean, but there are a plethora of people who are famous who I kind of admire and think, aren't they great? I always like it when life hits you spontaneously, though, isn't it?
That's a lot to be said for spontaneity.
Nothing better than meeting bumping into somebody that you didn't know and they were a stranger a minute ago, and the next thing you know, you've got 3 things in common, and you leave in a really good frame of mind. They're my favourite interactions in the world.
Anyway, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I know, is one of your.
She would be. If we're talking the realm of famous people, she would be fantastic, because she really doesn't worry about what other people seem to think.
Yeah. So speaking of lifting spirits, so here's a short film, Tom, that I hope encourages, all of our viewers who are enjoying tonight's In Conversation with broadcast to perhaps consider just making a very, very small donation to help the charity with its continued efforts. Of lifting spirits. I want to talk about Uplift 2. All right. So I think now's a good time to maybe just play. You've got a couple of short films I know Grace has got lined up to give people a little perspective, and then we can chat about Uplift 2 for a minute or two. Yeah, let's see those films, and let's see. There we go. You can chat them through.
Oh yeah, of course. So this has been a labour of love, and I think has been a theme that you've got, that when you invent something, you've got to be passionate about it. A few years ago, I think I was frustrated. Actually, I was frustrated after the referendum, the way that that everybody seemed to be righteous or at each other or whatever it was. Right, and you're right, you're wrong, whatever it was. And I thought, oh God, you've all lost your sense of humour. And so I thought that the national psyche seemed to take a little bit of a dip. And at the same time as well, my beloved gran, was suffering with dementia, and I would visit her in her care home, and I'd often find her anxious, and if she'd been watching the telly, that was more likely to be so. These very fast focused, fast paced, kind of stressful in itself, certainly if you bring the news in. So I started to make these, start to look for ways that you might be able to unwind the mind a little bit. But I didn't want to use a phone. I didn't want to use anything that was smart technology. I like real simplicity. I also, and I've been feeling this since my mid-20s, so probably for 20 years now, I am an industrialist, but I'm also an environmentalist. And I have I don't believe in waiting for the leaders of the world to show us the right way. I think they're entrenched in the patterns of the 20th century. I think that sometimes as a creative, you have to be a leader yourself. And so I was inspired to find a way to create a wonderful object that would help us relax, that was powered by the sun. That was really it. And I have a fascination with spirals. And there's something really, if you imagine, in fact, the audience may not know, but in the 1980s, there used to be a very famous desktop toy called Newton's Cradle, and it involved steel balls that would bang each other back and forth.
Yeah.
You don't know it, but it was almost visually metaphorical of that 1980s mindset, which is kind of all cause and reaction, chain effect, and this linear approach to our minds. And I think that, well, I don't really know what's happened to the consciousness of the planet, but I'm convinced it's opening up. And all I do know is myself and my imagination, and that is that I've been attracted to spirals and the movement of them all of my life. So I took this theme and I started to make these sculptures, and my gran, the first time I took it to her, it really brought a soothing feeling to her, and I knew there was a kind of magic in it, and that gave me the inspiration to turn that into a business. And then of course I wanted to make it perform even better in terms of the environment. So one of the problems that I saw in the world, and again, this is like, you can see the things in the news and you can feel, oh my God, that's terrible. So I saw the marine waste and the fishing nets, and we've all seen the videos with life tangled in them in the wrong situation, the ghost nets that drift, all of these things. And I just simply think practically, and actually an element of me that goes, it's my responsibility to do this, because I am able-bodied and I'm able-minded, and there's nothing stopping me from achieving something unless it's me that's stopping me, essentially. So I thought, let's take this problem of fishing nets and let's combine it with my beautiful sculpture, and let's see if I can make these objects so they look like ocean waves. And of course, you have to take a risk and you have to pioneer that space. It hadn't been done, but now I'm 18 months later, and I've handmade, I think, maybe 1,400 of these spirals now, and they're all around the world, and some of them are with very famous people, and some of them are with muscle warriors, and some of them are in my town in windows, and some of them are with, it's amazing. And what's so important is, because I've done it with all the passion that I haven't really had to sell it to people. I don't like being a salesperson. I like to just do what I do, and if people like it, that's great. And this project has worked like that. So I formed a company, and we're called Uplifting Products.
Well, I tell you what, there are 9 families who absolutely love it, and I think this is a perfect segue, Grace, to play a little bit of a film from one of our Muscle Warrior Power Chair Football Club members. Bit of a surprise here for you, Tom.
Wow.
Wow, that is trippy. That is psychedelic, that is. I mean, is it actually moving, or am I just dreaming? I don't know. It's never ending, guys. What is up, guys? How are you doing? It's your boy, Luigi21, better known as Gianluca Luisi, aka probably the best player in the Muscle Warrior team. But I'm here today to talk about my uplift. And yes, it's been one of the most difficult years on record. 2020 was not your average year and very difficult, especially for people more vulnerable. I mean, I don't like to use the word vulnerable. I prefer, you know, at risk or just completely awesome and amazing people that all of us have had to be and endure this year, you know. But this uplift is a sign, like the vaccine is a sign that things can and will get better. And when the sun is out, there's even more chance of that, because your uplift is the thing that probably has literally uplifted you since you've got it. And I know mine has, and it's spinning in all its glory. And you know that.
So, Tom, that was a little message. There's more of that. We'll share the full film with you later. But it's that Gianluca who's one of our, in fact, he's our next in conversation with guests. There's a bit of a reveal right there. But
Well,
you know, it just gives you a little bit of a sense of the impact of, you know, your passion. And I think the one word that I took from what Gianluca was saying was that uplift is, you know, it's providing a sense of well-being and a sense of hope to all of our Muscle Warrior Power Chair football players who received it a couple of days before Christmas. Actually, it was very special. So thank you from me to you on behalf of all of those families, because it means a lot to them, I know. And there's more feedback coming through, and I'll share it with you another time. But hey, time's moving on.
As you know from this talk already, it's rare that I'm speechless. But honestly, I can't. You can only imagine and kind of look through my eyes to see how it feels to me to see my creation actually having an effect for somebody there. And I'm then imagining myself as a boy who wanted to be a creator and kind of going, you've done everything you've tried to do there, and it's all you could hope for as an inventor who's designed something like this, is to have an uplifting effect on somebody. I'm so moved. Thank you for sharing that.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. So we're coming towards nearly the end of our conversation, Tom. I wanted to ask you about 2 goals or 2 aspirations that you want to achieve in your life.
What would I like to achieve? Well, I think again I've touched on it a little bit. I have this deep sense of, you know, I just have such a love for people, and I really adore people's stories, but it really doesn't matter where you came from or what form you're in, or it just doesn't. And anything that brings us into peaceful unity with each other is like a life. It's like my mission. It's like so that this uplifting spirits and uplifting products that's who I am. If you meet me on the high street, I'm that person.
You're that person.
It's an attitude. It's like and don't get me wrong, I'm not a blind optimist. It's not like I get that life's hard and there are people in certain moods, but I'm as anti-war as you can imagine. So
I'm going to dive into the chat room for a few more questions, and then we're gonna wrap up. Sharon, hi Sharon, good evening to you. What do your friends and family think of your inventions, Tom?
Well, it depends on who you ask. I've got a friend called Paul, and every time I say I've got a new idea for something, he thinks it's his. So he's just got this idea that he's had every conversation with me in my life, and that was another one that he's given me. So there is that. generally they're so encouraging. My father was always a brilliant challenge because he's, of course, as an engineering mindset, so he'd challenge me, but only in the right kind of way. And you don't want to have an easy gate all the time. So, but of course, I couldn't do what I do if I hadn't been encouraged.
I'm going to just have a quick burst of blue sky thinking with you in terms of power chairs. So electric wheelchairs. All our beneficiaries are using, or most of our beneficiaries are using electric wheelchairs, as I do, my power chair. And Mel's popped a great question in about, what do I need from Tom to invent for my chariot, as I call it affectionately. And I'm thinking about our community. And I remember a few years ago, I attended a hospice over in Cheshire, and I created a challenge, which was, a bit like we asked sort of Sir Alan Sugar to stomp up £100,000, and it was a fictional thing, okay, to design, the most fantastic power chair. And I asked 6 or 7 young people, all with muscular dystrophy, all sitting in their power chairs, what for them would they be looking for in terms of design, be it aesthetics, be it technology, functionality, whatever. So do you know what, Tom, if there's anything that comes to your mind that you think, actually, there's a thought, we'll have another conversation.
Definitely, love to. I would, I welcome anybody to feedback those kind of problems to me. The truth is, like all these things, I'd have to join you. I'd have to spend time in one in order to have the end. I could not assume that I knew at all what I was talking about. I would have to either question you forever or spend a week in the life of, and then I may gain some insight. So yeah.
So a couple of our families, the O'Leary family said, thank you so much, Tom. And the Malik family said, thank you, Tom. That's great. Thank you, guys. I really, really appreciate your comments and your notes of appreciation to Tom. So, Tom, final question to close this evening's in conversation off. So you've been a great guest. Thank you so much. And one thing I wanted to ask you is, what can we do? What can we all do to perhaps make the world a better place?
Well, I think it was the only thing that I didn't say a moment ago when you were talking about the tips to how to go through the tips to how to kind of keep sane through the pandemic and all those kind of things. Do you know what makes me feel? And it's a really funny one because you've got to play it right. You've got to do it for the right reasons. We're not here to save anybody. I'm not here to save anybody. I'm here to look after myself and my frequency, right? If I can look after myself and my frequency, then I'm better, and then I'm better for other people. I'm better for you. But there's something that really powerful happens when you do something kind for somebody else, and you feel super good about yourself. But so that, and it doesn't have to be very much. It can be the smallest thing. I sent a poster to a care home a couple of weeks ago, and they put it up in their staff room, and they're so thrilled with it. It was just a poster, and it didn't cost me lots of money. I did it, and it went up, and somebody felt special, and that act is something that we can all do for each other all of the time. And so it doesn't have to be even as extravagant as a gesture, as a gift. The best gift is your words. Compliment somebody. Just tell them that they're looking good today. Don't make it up. If I only say it if you feel it, but feel it and don't feel inhibited from that. So make someone feel special, but just saying something nice. It's the most powerful thing. And if they're a stranger, I promise you, that special thing that you say to them, it like multiplies by 100. And they will really remember that. If you give a compliment to somebody in the street or whatever, or on even a comment on someone's YouTube, as someone who creates things, when somebody says something nice, wow, that like puts a whole scoop of golden feeling into my cup, and that's priceless.
So speaking of a golden feeling, Tom, I'm going to invite you to give your best muscle warrior salute and hold it for 3 seconds.
Absolutely. These guns.
There you go. Thank you so much. And for those that don't know, our Muscle Warrior Salute is a visible symbol of hope, courage, strength, and unity for all those with muscular dystrophy across the country. Now, before we finish up, I'd love to get everyone's feedback. So please, as always, head to the charity's Facebook page where you'll find a Survey Monkey link, 30 seconds, just 30 seconds of your time, and any comments so we can improve the broadcast experience even more. That would be fantastic. And thank you again. If you've enjoyed tonight's episode, please can I ask you all to think about making a little donation, knowing that you'll be helping us change lives and give hope in bringing a little magic via our virtual Muscle Dream efforts. Thanks again so much. And Tom, I've got to ask, if you know someone who you think would make an interesting guest, okay, for one of our future In Conversation With episodes, have a think and come back to us and let us know. And finally, breaking news. This is our drum roll moment. Plug time for our next In Conversation With guest taking place on Wednesday, the 17th of March. Kickoff at 7:30 p.m. sharp. There's the diary date, Wednesday, the 17th of March, 7:30, episode 6, where I'll be joined by one of our past Muscle Dream beneficiaries. You've already met him this evening. Really thrilled to welcome Gianluca Luisi, not to be confused, I might add, with one of the most interesting Italian pianists of our time. I've done a little bit of research. Gianluca is actually one of the charity's long-standing muscle warriors, a fan of Formula One, of the right footy team, Spurs. And we'll be chatting about in Luisi 21's Guide to Life in Lockdown. There's the show title. And Gianluca lives with the most severe form of muscular dystrophy, otherwise known as Duchenne muscular dystrophy, or DMD, supported by a beautiful family. And here's a shout out to you guys, to Gianluca. Hi, to your bro, Massimo, to mum and dad. Hope you guys are all good this evening. I know that Gianluca's disability does not stop him living a full life. And I happen to hear that he's aiming to get 1 million followers on his Luisi 21 YouTube channel. So do you know what? If we can help you do that, Gianluca will help you with that. Your channel's filled with video life moments. And I know that Gianluca is a champion of positivity and optimism and authenticity. I also know that, he likes to encourage people to share their true selves. Something that Tom touched on a little earlier, in living each and every day as well as we all can. Not only is he a very, very accomplished power chair football player and clearly an advocate of Upbeat too, but here's the thing. I know his ambition is to help the Muscle Warriors power chair football team get promoted when the season kicks off, and it will. So from me to all the players, to Ryan, to Reese, Dan, Jack, Shay, Martin, Mitchell, Tom and Gianluca, supported by our football manager Liam and our assistant coach Alan and club secretary Karen, there's the shout out to all of you. Bring it on. Remember the date, Wednesday the 17th of March, 7:30. There's the diary date. Big thanks once again to our guests, Tom Lawton, to Grace, to Joe, to Shari, to Kate, and to Lindsay in the studio for helping tonight's broadcast run as smoothly as it did. You guys rock. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the week, and bye-bye for now.